So, good evening and welcome to the next of our series of webinars. This is the third one. If you haven't seen the other two, don't worry, you can still watch them on our YouTube channel. And in fact, even if you've missed the webinar and you're watching it afterwards, that's not a problem. So what we're going to be talking about today, the first webinar was about gathering. So the first part of the communion service where we gather together and what that all means. The second one was about how we put the readings into practical action. So it's about readings and how, what the sermon's about, why it shouldn't be that boring and rattle on for ages, more than 10 minutes, that sort of thing. And today we're going to be talking more about the communion itself, but we'll be speaking a lot more about symbols and why we use symbols. So as we go along, if you have any questions or any comments, put them in the comments down the bottom. And then after the video part is finished, we'll go into a Zoom meeting where you can ask us questions in person if we're there. You never know. So I'm joined today with Ian and Gail. Say hello, Ian.
Hi there.
That's very enthusiastic. Thank you for that. And it's sort of like, you know, Gail, can you say hello enthusiastically?
Hello.
That's better. Right, okay. Heck. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at some of the things to do with symbols. So I'll share my screen. It's very professional, is this? Okay. So these are symbols. So we put this slide in basically to talk about why do we, when we're in church, do ritualized things? Why do we use physical things like candles and bread and wine and all that sort of thing? Why do we do that? Why can't we just do it in a different way? Why do we do that? And really that's what we're going to be talking about for the rest of this session is why do we use symbols? What do they mean and why are they important? That's what we'll be focusing on. So what I've done really is not to think about Christian symbols at first, but to think about how symbols across the world and across all human cultures use very similar ones. So Ian, enthusiastically, what type of symbol do you think this is showing you in these different things?
I think this could be light in the darkness or fire, perhaps.
That's it, light in the darkness. Can you remember what these are?
That looks like Southeast Asia. Lanterns being sky lanterns being lit off.
That's right. So,
and that's the on the top right there. That's a Burning Man. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's in the is it Nevada desert somewhere over there?
Yeah, what they do in Burning Man is it's a new sort of festival, and it's done by people who don't have any sort of religious affiliation really, though they might have, but it's not part of a world faith. It's just something people do, and what they do is they write on pieces of paper and bring other symbols from their own lives, and they place them in the middle of that fire. You can see those little boxes there. And then at the end of the festival, they set it all on fire to symbolize that the bad parts of their life have gone away and the light of the fire has overshadowed and destroyed those bad parts of their lives. That's what happens in Burning Man. It's a big, massive festival. Looks like quite a laugh, really, to be fair. But the question is about really is they're using light in a completely different context to what we do. So, but for either of you, it's a bit weird, I always think, that, say, even Southeast Asia, they're using light in that way and they're doing something to make the light go up. That's a bit strange, isn't it?
I guess so. Yeah.
Because the reason behind that is that it's a bit weird how there's that universal symbol of how light ascending, going up, is resonant with people who've got no or very little contact with Christianity. That's the thing. So it's not this idea of light overshadowing things is something about something we as human beings connect with, regardless of.
Yeah, I think there's something in the fact that in the light things always seem clearer and it's more hopeful. But when you're walking in the dark, things don't seem so good. And there's probably something about stumbling around in the darkness, but the light lighting up your way or something like that. I think that's probably why the symbol of light's used kind of universally.
Yeah, and darkness is a dangerous time because it's more dangerous in the night than it is in the day. And all these are like practical human experiences that every human being has had of light and darkness, light being better than darkness. The one at the bottom there is the Bushmen in the Kalahari Desert, I think, using light and fire and things like that. So another light and dark, I only put this in because I'm a nerd, I apologize, is the light side and the dark side. So even in popular culture, we have these light and dark motifs or images all the way through things. And nobody explains, when Darth Vader turns up at the beginning of Star Wars, nobody's got to explain he's the bad guy because he's the bad guy. That's the thing, because he symbolizes in the way he moves, in what he is, all of that, his sinus problems when he breathes, that sort of thing. That sort of thing. Okay, and this is something else from a film. This is from the Indiana Jones films. There's a real geek theme that goes through these slides. I do apologize for it. Sorry, sort of nerding out. These are from the Indiana Jones films. The one on the left is sunset, and that's just before they go down and raid the Ark and get the Ark. So it's going towards nighttime, so you know something bad's going to happen. And on the right-hand side is when they're riding off into the sunrise. So that's from the last film, the Last Crusade. Once they defeated all the evil, they ride off together towards the sunrise, which is the last shot of the film, showing you that good has overcome evil. So that's always great. Yeah. So, anyone got a clue where that is? What type of symbol?
We're talking water, are we? Washing, cleansing.
Yeah. So why do you think that's a universal symbol then?
Well, I mean, water is such a powerful symbol, isn't it? We use it so much. We can't live without it. It's everywhere. And it's there for washing things and cleaning away dirt. It's also a symbol of life, isn't it? I mean, even at the birth of a baby, the waters appear, don't they, are broken. So there's something, it's a very, very powerful symbol. Cleansing, new birth, new life. Very powerful.
Yeah, and these guys here, this is from a place called Varanasi in India, right? And it's on the bank of the Ganges. And what those things are called is ghats, those steps. And what people are doing, they go down the ghats and they get into the Ganges. If you look really closely in the bottom left-hand corner, there's someone who's got they're washing their face in it. If you look really closely, it's quite hard to see. Yeah. So what they do is, they go down into the Ganges, right, and they wash their faces and they go into the water for a moment and then they come back up like that. And then in doing so, they've left behind everything bad and they're embracing a new and different way of life. Now, that's really weird because that's sort of, well, not weird, but really profound, because you see there, that is the primary symbol of baptism. So they have a different idea behind it in lots of ways, but the symbol is the same because the symbol is a human symbol used all over the place. So, I quite like that, Varanasi. And here's a couple of others with an African tribe. And what they do is they're painting themselves, and then they're going into the river and washing it off. And that's similar to what we do in baptism, where we put the oil on the baby first, and then before we baptize them, don't we? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the same with the Muslim guy there who's having a wash, you know. But our oils we use for baptism are a bit boring. I had a mate from the Armenian church, and they have a big bottle of oil, and they pour the bottle of oil on the kid's head. I think the Orthodox do this as well. They rub it all over the kid, and then they dunk the person in, and then pull them up, and then wash it all off. I don't think.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that's biblical. You know, that's the way it should be done.
Yeah, it's hotter in Armenia, though, isn't it? That's the thing.
Actually, I've seen a combination of the two symbols. When I was doing teacher training, we had we talked about RE lessons, and there was a sort of a Hindu ceremony where if somebody produces a light and you're supposed to sort of gather the light and wash yourself in the light. This was probably 30 years ago, and I think quite a few of us felt a bit, ooh, this is a bit spooky, but it's just a real simple thing, sort of bathing in that light, knowledge, and, you know, I guess being enlightened.
Yeah, and it's the point of it is that all these different symbols speak to us as human beings, and because they're universal, that's why they've been chosen, because it communicates something without words. That's the thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, do you want to say a bit more about that, Gail, about communicating something without words?
Yeah, I was just thinking about how when you've done something wrong, you do want to cleanse yourself, don't you? And sometimes that washing away, and we talk about washing away our sins, don't we? About cleansing ourselves of things, as well as, you know, the symbol of baptism and cleaning. And so, yeah, I think when you look at streams, when they come down from the mountain and the clear water, people they automatically want to wash themselves in those streams because they're so clear and fresh and new. And I think there is something in that, yeah.
Yeah, there's something. I think as well it's to do with. It's probably I would say it's a biological thing in a way, is that we're naturally attracted to it because it's the thing that gives us life, and that's something we know, not because someone's told us it, but because it's instinctive. It's on that instinctive level, really. That's not about thinking. It's about feeling, that sort of thing. You know. So the other thing with symbols is they bind communities together. So, and they symbolize that you're part of a community, and they express something of yourself. So this is my ones. Sorry, it's a bit nerdy into some of these. But so I've got the Welsh rugby shirt for obvious reasons. And I'd wear that when it's the match, and I go and see the match, and it's a great sense of togetherness where we're all wearing the same shirt or similar shirts as we go along, and that's an important part of the ritual, really, of going to a sports game, that you would wear a certain thing. Even if I watch the match in the house, I always put my shirt on, because we might lose if we don't, like, innit? You know, so it never works, mind. But, you know, you always put your shirt on to watch the game, right? The other thing I've got it live as well. Look, I've got my Iron Maiden mug. So, because I like Iron Maiden, I have lots of Iron Maiden things. And when I go to see Iron Maiden concerts, I wear my shirts and all that. And on the top there, that's the mask I'm buying for when the masks come in. Can anyone remember what that is? On the mask
from Alien.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's the face hugger from Alien. So, but it's interesting. Well, for the masks, you could just have a boring white one. Do you know what I mean? But I thought it's interesting how even with masks, people now you can get things to symbolise who you are and what your affiliations are, even on masks. Christians haven't got in on it. Only the geeks really have got
No,
it.
maybe that's something we need to do. We need to create a Christian mask rather than have a face hugger mask.
Because somebody put one through my door the other day. They made it for me, and it's got God. I think it's got God is love on it. So that's why.
Oh, there we are.
Churches and stuff like that. So what I really want is for social distancing one that says, "Let me tell you about Jesus," and that would really party of the waves. I'd have 4 meters all the way around me. It'd be brilliant.
That'll be all right, wouldn't it? You say, "I am a Jehovah's Witness," like, innit? You know. So yeah, that'd be all right. But yeah, I like the face huggers. And the thing in the middle is my patron saint, who is Maximilian Kolbe. So on the left-hand side is his Franciscan habit, and on the right-hand side is his uniform you have to wear in Auschwitz, because he died in Auschwitz. So that's a little. I've got loads of stuff of Maximilian Kolbe. So, Gail, this is your lot, isn't it? What are you going to say something about these symbols?
Yeah, so I was trying to think of things which symbolised stuff that represents some of me, I guess. And so on the right-hand corner, the Mother's Union symbol. So we have, I've only just joined recently, but we've got badges that we can wear to symbolise the fact that we belong to the Mother's Union. And to me, that's really good, because now whenever I go anywhere, I spot people who are wearing the Mother's Union badge, and I know that they are one of us, and that they are subscribing to the same carer, if you like. They are praying at the same time as me, praying for the same things, and we're working together to care for families. And the T-shirt on the left-hand side, so that's my husband's band. So I wear this T-shirt when I go out to see his band, and so do lots and lots of other people who go along to see the band. So we've all got these T-shirts on, so we know that we follow this band and we enjoy this band. And it's a good conversation starter, because people look and they say, "Oh, you know Sons of Liberty?" Yes, we do. So so that's another one which kind of represents something of me. And then on the in the bottom corner there, these are some wristbands from a festival that we go to every year called Cropredy, Fairport Convention. And so everybody has to wear one of these to be able to get into the festival. It's a 4-day festival. And when you're walking around everywhere, you can see people with these wristbands on. And again, you know they're one of you, and we all kind of share this shared experience of being part of this big festival. And when you're driving home and you stop in the motorway services, you can see people with their bands on. They haven't taken them off. I bet people don't take them off for weeks, actually. But you can see again that we've had that shared experience of being together.
I had that when I went to Glastonbury, when I went to the services afterwards on the M5. Everyone had the Glastonbury things on. And we're all queuing up for the toilet, because it was the first time you could go to the loo in 4 days. So I remember that.
There is some of that.
Yeah, so you know. But you're right, though. It's with the Sons of Liberty, it's the same if you go and see a gig. Part of the reason that you wear the T-shirt is, I remember I went to Maiden last time with Andrew in Liverpool. And as we walk through Liverpool, you see loads of other people. You're like, "Oh, you're a Maiden fan, you go into the gig." But then even if you're not going to the gig and you wear this stuff, it's sort of good to see, like you're saying with the Mother's Union, it's the symbol that binds you together with that common experience, especially if that symbol has been given to you in that community or by that community. Like Mother's Union give out the badges, don't they? You know, so it's about symbols binding people together with that common experience. Yeah, it's hard to describe, hard to work out with words, isn't it? So, Ian, what's this got for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, not to labour the points that would be made. I mean, you got my Chelsea mug there, lifetime Chelsea supporter. It's not just about a team, actually. It's about a sport, and I think kind of God invented football so that blokes would have something to talk about, really. So,
Some girls,
you
and
know,
some girls.
even on a Zoom meeting, I've been drinking out my Chelsea mug, and there's somebody on the end that gets his Man United mug out. So it's a kind of common thing there about the football. But there is something very special about going to a match, and you're all dressed in the blue. It's just, you know, and the music plays, like, these are our songs, you know which songs are going to come. It's just like, it's a bit like a church service, really. You know, this bit's coming, and then that bit's coming, and then it's going to start. And then together, you know, you've got this kind of sort of stylized complaining about the referee and complaining about the other team and teasing them and stuff like that. Fantastic humour as well, but wonderful togetherness. It's up there, that's a singing bowl. And I think I could easily put a Bible there, because I read my Bible every day. The Bible's really, really important to me. But I guess recent years, we've explored different ways of expressing my Christian faith, and more down the contemplative line. And one of the things that Christians of the contemplative faith started to do in the 20th century is they started to bring in some of the Buddhist symbols, which kind of work with them. So instead of actually doing their prayer on their own in their cell, they would do it together. There was something very powerful at praying together. So that's one of my daily practices, and I belong to a group down in Bristol. They're my people. We know how we talk about the same things. We know we're on the same wavelength. And then in the bottom left-hand corner is a parkrun shirt. And just before Christmas, I did my 50 parkruns. Parkrun is a sort of start in this country. It's international now, but very, very much national. Everybody runs 5K 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning. There's courses all the way around, all over the country. Our nearest one is Chipping Sodbury. And there is, again, this wonderful community feeling. Again, it's a bit like church. Every week they're saying, can we have some volunteers for next week, please? I just love the community spirit. I love the sort of progress. You get up to 100, you get your next shirt and stuff like that. It's just a wonderful, wonderful thing, which I love being part of.
Yeah, I've got one of those singing bowls, but I call it a bonga. Because if you hit it wrong, it goes bong, don't it? Rather than getting it to sing. So
that's the Welsh name for it. You know?
But the bonga.
like property ping, you know, it's like
Probably. That's microwave. Microwave, a bonga. I think I might have got it from someone else. But yeah, so it's all about togetherness, isn't it? About sharing that same experience. And I put this slide in about dance. Now, Ian's already talked about the dancing together that Chelsea do, and the songs that they sing, and how sports events are a bit like church, really. They probably do services better than church because they're a bit more human and a bit less controlled. No, I mean that. Yeah.
Heckled before.
What's that? Sorry.
I've been heckled by Ian before.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I've been heckled a few times. Yeah, but I think that's quite good. So about the dancing, that's why I put the rugby thing in. But the picture on the left is from Live Aid in 1985, and it's when Queen were playing, and it's Radio Gaga. And when you go and see Queen and they sing Radio Gaga, there's a dance you've got to do for it. And We Will Rock You as well has got a certain dance that you do. And the interesting thing is those dances all involve putting your hands in the air. I always find it weird that no matter where you go in all sorts of contexts, in all sorts of cultures, that when people are celebrating or being together, they always put their hands in the air. I always find that's quite interesting. So
I guess it's something about opening yourself up, isn't it? Sort of making, because if you're unsure about something or not feeling that happy, you tend to close yourself in. But I guess there's something about opening yourself up when you're celebrating.
Yeah, it is. And it's about, actually as well, it's easier to sing as well. And maybe when we say the Eucharist, when we put our hands up like this, it's actually easier to project your voice, and it's easier to sing with your hands in the air. So it's more efficient. But I think a lot of these things is a kind of practical thing behind it as well, but it is something human about being together with your hands in the air. And that's a lovely 80s top that woman's got on as well. That's just a sort of fashion crime there. Here's another interesting one. Now, Gail sent me this, and I haven't got a clue. You'll have to talk us through this. This is another spontaneous ritual, isn't it? What's this?
Yeah, so this is at Fairport Convention, the Cropredy Festival every year. It's on a Saturday lunchtime. Richard Digance comes on and does a set. And right at the end, he does this song which is about Morris dancing. And he gets Morris dancers on the stage, and then as he begins, everybody gets their hankies out of their bags and starts waving them around, and it's kind of grown over the years, and it's almost like a secret. So people hide their handkerchiefs until right at the beginning of the song, and then everybody brings it out, and you just see a wave of handkerchiefs and toilet paper and all sorts of things waving in the air. And it's this great feeling of looking around and seeing everybody else, knowing that they've got their handkerchiefs hidden. And then at some moment, we all just spring out with our handkerchiefs. And it seems, it seems sweet, but it binds everybody together again. It's a sign, that we're all together.
Yeah, and I think as well is that if we look at something from outside of our experience, that could be football or pop concerts or handkerchiefs or anything else like that. It always seems weird because we're not part of that culture. So the thing is with it, I think sometimes in church we've said, oh, we need to sort of dial down the symbols because people won't understand them, or we have to kind of make them smaller because people will think we're a bit weird. And we've got very, very self-conscious about our faith and how we express it in church. And it's almost as if we're really embarrassed about our own tradition because we think, oh, people won't understand it. People won't get it. But when we are in these different festivals or contexts, they're all unique, but they're all similar. So an Iron Maiden festival isn't an Iron Maiden gig unless they have a big puppet of Eddie the monster coming out at the end and bashing the guitarist on the head. That's just what you do. It sounds really weird, but it's just not, and everyone's waiting for that moment of like when it happens. But it doesn't matter where you are, all sorts of different things, and they all come from the bottom up. It's ordinary people started this. It wasn't the band, was it, Gail? It took like no. Yes, and that's the thing, is that they've got to come from the people because they express something beyond words. That's the thing. It's really hard to talk about. Yeah. I put this in about graves. Ian, can you have a think about why we put flowers on graves? What does that mean? Why do we do that, do you think?
Well, I think when I saw this picture earlier, it reminded me of, when you have an accident on the road and there's sadly a fatality, flowers appear. I think it probably goes back to quite pagan things about an understanding of, flowers and the spirit of somebody close. But it's I guess in the Christian context, it's about, in death there is new life, and you just want to celebrate that life. It's hard when somebody's died. It's very hard, but you want to celebrate that life, and flowers are perhaps more than anything just show vibrant life, don't they?
Mm.
Yeah, they're bright, aren't they? They're bright and they're eye-catching, and they're the opposite of death. They're alive. So it's that
light in the darkness, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the use of opposites. Yeah, it's the light in the dark, the symbol of hope. But I don't think anybody thinks about it in those sorts of terms. It's just something that you can only understand by doing it.
Yeah, this is it. It's totally spontaneous. It's just it's what you do. You don't question it. Nobody explains it to you. You just pick it up and you just do it, and whatever it means, you instinctively know what it means. Yeah,
and there's no service book for how to put a flower at a road traffic accident properly.
No,
there's no
exactly.
book of common accident for flowers arrangements or anything like that, is there?
Yeah, that's right.
it
That's
just,
right. And I mean, just round here, we've had lots of anniversaries of some fatalities, and the flower's just gone up on the anniversary. It's just there. If you look on Wesley Road.
yeah. So it's that spontaneous thing of opposites. And the other thing that people tend to do a lot of is touching. I know at the coronavirus time, it's been quite hard, you know, for everybody, because we can't touch people. But even in death, a lot of people like to touch the coffin. They like to touch graves. I tried to find a picture of it, but I couldn't. There was this wonderful bit in Ant and Dec's DNA journey where Dec went to the grave of his great-great-grandfather in Ireland, and he instinctively, when he found the grave, he touched the grave and he put his hand out, and he was touching the grave, because in touching that grave, he was building a connection with himself and his ancestors, and nobody told him to do it. So
when I go to my wife's grave, that's exactly what I do. I don't think about it; you just do it, you know. And when I'm conducting a funeral, I especially if I've known the person, I really feel I need to touch and connect with them in some way. I really do.
It's still that physical presence, isn't it? You still need that physical symbol. That thing that you can actually touch.
Yeah, it's like when I do funerals, what I do is at the bit where you commend the person to the care of God, I always put my hand on the coffin, and I make the sign of the cross when I say the name Jesus. I don't think many people probably don't even see that because I've got my back to them because I'm facing the other way and things. But it's sort of I think it says a lot without saying without words. It says more than I can say.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, I can remember my grandmother's funeral, a long time before I was ordained, and you know, I sort of didn't know how funerals worked, and I sort of let us pray, put my head down, and put my head up, and she was gone, you know, and that felt really weird. So for me, it's so important to go over to that last connection with that person and touch. It's just so important. Just because what happened at my grand's funeral.
Yeah. And I think hands together, eyes closed is a way of controlling naughty children at assembly.
Yeah, that's right.
That's all it is.
That's what the Norman put in.
Yeah, it's a Victorian thing. When they started having school assemblies, they needed to control the kids, naughty children like me, hands together, eyes closed. But I never understood that, you know, in church, my mother and other people would say, "Oh, don't do that. That's silly." You know, it was kind of like, because people would look up, and it's quite. But I think because we're taught that as little children in school, it kind of it sort of sticks with us. I put this in as a joke. It's not really a joke. It's just sort of a bit. I find it funny. Is this plaque thing here was put in 2010 to celebrate Darwin 150 years of the origin of species, and is put in by leading atheists in Britain. Leading atheists in Britain to commemorate.
Is that people who don't believe in God?
Yeah, people who don't believe in God. It's put there by people who think anybody who does any rituals or anything like that is really silly and backward and basic, and they quite enjoy making fun of people who aren't like them, and they only believe in science and rationality. So they put it up there to celebrate science and rationality and to commemorate this debate between Samuel Wilberforce and Huxley. And when I went there, it's in Oxford outside the National Natural History Museum. And when I went there the other last year, these two atheists were there and they were touching it. So they'd gone there specially to see the plaque, and then they were touching the plaque, and his mate was taking a picture of him touching the plaque to show he'd gone there. And I said quite loudly, "Oh, look, they're on pilgrimage." So they'd gone on pilgrimage. I was dragged into the... I don't think that they said, "No, we're not." And I said, "Oh, yes, you are." And then I was dragged into the museum. I was dragged into the museum and said, "You're supposed to be here with me." So there we are. So I was supposed to... Okay, so that's all that stuff about world religions and our need for physical things to connect and express who we are as human beings, right? And that's why we use symbols and we use rituals and we use these corporate things, together things in church, basically because that's how we show our deepest feelings. Because all the things we talked about have been how we show our deepest feelings together as a community. There's all those things we talked about being really quite emotional. So I know you just talk about what a sacrament is and how they work in a sense. So what communion is and baptism is, all the different things we do in church. And I think the best way to understand it is through the story of the angel visiting Mary from the Christmas story. Okay. And in this story, the angel comes to Mary and says, "Would you like to have God's son?" And Mary says, yes. But she does say yes, because she kind of gives a kind of half yes. And her full yes comes later on. And then when she says yes to the angel, Jesus is born inside her. And what we're doing in church, in the sacraments, in communion and baptism, is we're doing the same thing that Mary did. Is God is coming to us and saying, "Do you want Jesus to be born inside you?" And we have the option of saying yes or no, which is why at communion we say body of Christ and they say amen. And that's what it means. The amen is us saying yes. That's the point. So it's not us doing something. All of the things that we do in church are response to God, are yes to God. So that's why I put this in. Yeah.
It's me.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Amen.
So sacraments are outward signs of inward graces. So in other words, the outward signs are things like bread and wine, and the inward grace is the being filled with the Holy Spirit. That's basically it. But the reason we use outward signs is for all the reasons we talked about earlier, because it's the deepest way of communicating who we are. It's our best yes we can give to God. So and if we look at these symbols we've got here, laying on of hands, we do that for in healing services, and we do it in all sorts of services. Ordinations, we lay on hands because we need to touch, and that's been hard in COVID. Is nobody's been allowed to be ordained because nobody's allowed to touch anybody, because it's got to be touching to work. Oil, light, fire, water, wine. Why do we use wine, Ian, in communion rather than water? Why wine, do you think?
Well, two reasons. I suppose that the main reason is because Jesus said he took the wine at his Last Supper at the Passover, and he said, whenever you do this, remember me. And he specifically said the wine is like my blood, as bread is like my body. So I'd say that was simple.
So it wouldn't work if we used white wine?
I don't think it would. No. Well, I mean, I suppose you could, but I think this is, it's the colour of blood. I mean, that's what Jesus was getting at, wasn't it?
So the question then, I suppose, is why did Jesus choose wine? Because I know we do it because Jesus told us to, and that's the same for all the sacraments. They're instituted by Jesus. He thought them up. But why do you think he chose wine? You said about blood, to symbolize blood. Why else? Why wine?
Well, I'm not quite sure where you're going here, Howell, but there's a lot going on there. the wine is like his blood. I mean, he's taking it from the Passover, which of course was about the sacrificial lamb, which enabled the Israelites to escape judgment of the angel of death. So he's connecting it to his own history, his own religion, isn't he?
Yeah, that's
so
the
when
deep
we are
answer.
celebrating-
Yeah.
I give the not deep answer.
Yeah. Have the proper answer, Gail. He's got confused. Yeah.
Because they would have been drinking wine, and so every time they drank wine, they would use it as a representation of him. So it would have been something they drank quite a lot, because the water wouldn't necessarily have been great water as well. So
There's a practical thing, and as well, when you celebrate, you usually have a drink, don't you? I don't know. Maybe that's the thing. It's a sign of celebration.
Okay.
So yeah, you know, we're not Methodists, all right? Yeah, it's got to be celebration. Get the booze out. Yeah. So that's the thing. So and it's bread. Bread, I suppose, is because it's ordinary food, isn't it? It's just an everyday food, and they're everyday things. But the idea is that the act of eating and drinking in this context turns everyday things into extraordinary things. So it's transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary. That's the thing.
Thanks, Howell.
That's all right. You knew that anyway. I think it's because you've got a theology degree. We always do that. We go, oh, it must be a really complicated. I'm far worse for that. I go, there must be a really complicated theological question for this. And I go into all the books and work it all out. And it's like, no, it's just business booze. And that's what you use to celebrate. That's the answer. Simple as. And you go, yeah, it is, isn't it? So
it's Welsh theology, yeah.
Well, no, it's Welsh theology. I know about that. So what we're doing in communion really is, like Ian was saying, is we're just almost reenacting the central mystery of our faith. So we're reenacting with symbols the Last Supper, but we're also, in doing that, we're remembering, but it's more than remembering, we're kind of engaging with it in a ritual together. Jesus's Last Supper, his death, his resurrection, and his ascension, and then Pentecost. So we're doing that whole block of the Bible, but we're not just remembering it going, oh yeah, Jesus had the Last Supper. I think in doing the same thing that Jesus did, we are joining the disciples at that same table. It's like a kind of time machine in a way, is we are linked, just like Gay was saying with the Yankees, is those symbols provide a link between you and all those people around you. And in celebrating communion, we are united with every Christian who has gone before us, and every Christian will come after us. And we are united with Jesus and those first Christians doing it then.
Yeah, and I think it's a symbol which joins everyone now. So we come into church from different places. We meet people that we wouldn't necessarily come across normally in our everyday lives. They wouldn't necessarily be the people that we would have been friends with. We have different interests, but actually what we do have in common is this communion and this sharing of the bread and wine, because we're this Christian family.
Yeah, that's right. And it's completely equal in that sense. Is it doesn't matter who you are, what background is, everybody gets the bread, everybody gets the wine. And if you think about diversity with Jesus' disciples, you know, they were very, very ragtag, sort of disorganized, diverse group, different races, different classes, different educational backgrounds. And I think that's the special thing with communion, is that we all come together and are transformed. So this is a thing from the Road to Emmaus story. We talked about this a bit in the last webinar. But that's the thing, is in going through this ritual act of receiving communion and retelling the story, we're able to recognize Jesus, because in the Road to Emmaus story, they recognize Jesus at the meal at the end. So the reason that the communion service is structured the way it is, we have the readings and the sermon first, which is a bit like Jesus walking along the road with his disciples. And then we have the meal together. And that's what the Amen means when we receive communion, is that we are recognizing, saying yes to God, just like Mary, and we're recognizing Jesus's resurrection and how Jesus can transform us. Because Jesus wants to transform us, but we have to say yes. And then for the transformation thing is, I put this in about the butterfly and the caterpillar, and I think this is what the idea of transformation is we don't become something else. We're the same, but we're different. And just like Jesus, after the resurrection, is different to what he was before he died, but he's also the same. And I think that's what we're going for, not just in ourselves, but in our community, in our church community, and in the community around us. We want to transform our world, really, in the here and now, into something better, and by transforming ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's a very powerful image, isn't it? I like some of the modern words of some service when they talk about, as we take the bread and the wine become part of our body, so Christ becomes part of us. There's something very powerful about that, actually. And as he becomes part of us, we are transformed to be more like him. I like that as well.
Yeah, and that's the essence of it, is that through remembering how Jesus transforms all of reality in his death and resurrection, in participating in it, in joining in with it through the communion service, we get that opportunity to say yes to him and be transformed. But it doesn't end with us. It's then we are sent out to transform the world around us.
Yeah, so, and I think also is you come to communion with an expectation. It's expectation not only to meet Jesus, but to be transformed by him, rather than as I'm going to church and go home afterwards. There should be a kind of excitable expectation. I'm going to meet with Christ. I'm going to be transformed by him today. Maybe in some small way, but I'm going to meet with him. That's a very, very exciting thing.
Yeah, so something I put in before is gathered to be transformed by Jesus, and then we're scattered, sent out to transform the world to make Jesus visible. That's the point. It's the kind of this sort of symbolic gathering that we have in communion. What we're trying to do is create that perfect community. We're never going to get there, but create a community which is better. So then that community, we as a community, can transform the world. That's the heart of everything, really. So,
chain reaction.
Yeah. So me trying to work this out, I did a diagram because I've already apologized a lot about being a geek. So because I'm a geek, I've done a diagram.
Yeah, of course.
All right, yeah. So bear with me, okay? So these arrows here are people, like all of us, coming to church on Sunday, right? And what we do is we all come together and we take everything from that week, everything who we are, everything we've experienced, all of us, and we take it to Jesus on the cross. And then, just like Jesus dies on the cross and goes into the tomb, what we bring, we want to be dying a bit to ourselves, those bad parts of ourselves, and to give thanks for the good parts of ourselves. And then Jesus rises from the tomb, but he rises from the tomb not with a purpose. He rises from the tomb to say that he has conquered death and has overcome all evil, so that we then can go through this cycle of death and resurrection. That's what communion's about, is us dying to ourselves and being reborn as a new creation, just like Jesus was every Easter. And then we're sent out to transform the world. That's the idea. And then what happens is we get a bit sidetracked by 11:10 on Sunday, right? After we've gone out, yeah? And we go off on the wrong road and it doesn't work out the way my diagram says. So that's why we got to come back next week. That's why I've got the big arrow there, the red arrow of failure, as we have to come back next week because we're not finished products. That's what it is.
We're human.
Yeah.
We're human, not God.
That's right. And that's the brilliant thing, is that God invites us on this journey to be transformed, but understands that we're never going to take it fully because we like Mary, give a kind of half yes most of the time. You know, and we transform just a little bit, and then we come back and we have another go, and then we have another go, and then we have another go. And that's what it's about. Because the goal really is to build heaven on earth, to go out and transform the world. But ultimately we will get to the full heaven. But at the moment, we just got to keep on trying to say yes to God and be transformed by Jesus to transform the world. So I hope you've enjoyed this webinar, whatever it is, and you've been putting your questions in the boxes next door. Please join us next week where we're going to be talking about the church's year and the seasons that we have in church, why we bother with that, what's the point of it, who cares, but that's next week. So please join us in the Zoom meeting. The link is in the notes and in the comments, and we'll do our best to kind of try and answer your questions as we go along.